Hello everyone, welcome to Business Live. Coming up in this bulletin, Presidential Advisor on the Economy Seth Terkper says government may look at other measures rather than extending the policy aimed at cushioning consumers from rising crude prices.
The discussions and negotiations that were taking place with Nigeria, Dangote and others to see whether we could boost, the West African production.
Also in this bulletin, fresh data from Maverick Research shows that Ghana's fast-moving consumer goods sector grew by 15% in value and 6% in volume in the first quarter of 2026. What does this mean? We shall be telling you. Plus, Ghana Revenue Authority to roll out a pilot phase of Fiscal and Electronic Devices Act to tighten VAT collection across formal and informal sectors.
We are going to implement the Fiscal Electronic Devices Act. That what it means is that for every retail point, by law, we have to use a device to sell.
We have details of this and more for you. Please stay. Thanks very much for your time. I am Pious, Kojo, Backah. Let's begin from the downstream sector because Presidential Advisor to the economy when it comes to the health of the economy largely, Seth Terkper, has indicated that government may look at other options to cushion consumers from rising crude prices. This follows report by a ratings agency, Fitch, that government could extend its policy introduced 4 weeks ago to cushion petroleum consumers from price hikes as a result of the US-Iran war. The initiative is set to expire this Friday, but Mr. Terkper says the initiative is still in its early days yet.
About the short term and the medium term.
The
president, the rates
extended.
No, I'm telling you that it's not just a single policy. At the time this announcement was being made, the more nuanced one we didn't come out that clearly was the preparations being made. The president mentioned to rehabilitate or, process possibly our own fuel. The discussions and negotiations that were taking place with Nigeria, Dangote and others to see whether we could boost, the West African production. But again, more importantly, the preparation by BOS and the energy sector led by MPA, to go back to the policy of increasing the number of fuel tanks and things that we have in order that would. So there are both immediate and short-term measures, which we know about, but there are the longer-term measures, and hopefully some of these will come out, when the minister sends his budget strategy document for stabilizing and moving the country to a more sustainable policy, going into the mid-year review and, the capital budget post-IMF.
All right, so let's bring in the consumer's perspective. Joining us via Zoom is Duncan Amwa, he's the Executive Secretary of COPEC. Duncan, thank you very much for making time to join us here on Business Live. Now, the next pricing window we know is just 4 days away. The relief that was granted by government for petroleum consumers is expected to expire. what is the recommendation of COPEC to government?
Pious, let me be a bit careful such that I do not throw the consumer, into any confusion. Where we sit, it looks as though the cushioning has had some significant impact on our pockets. And so it's a welcoming move or gesture. We are happy that government took that move. Again, government clearly would also have lost some revenue because it took that decision. If you put the two together or you marry the two, we would insist as of this point that just as the Honorable Seth Terkper has indicated, they should be able to extend this to the Ghanaian for at least another 4 weeks. Mind you, the reason for which prices on the international market have become quite high relative to what we saw before the advent of the U.S., Israel-Iranian conflict. We think that the foundational issues have not been dealt with. The Strait of Hormuz, as we speak, is still locked down. As we speak, the world buffer, you are looking at about 270 million barrels short. So clearly, we are depleting buffers very fast. You don't have a situation where a lot is coming onto the market as we speak. And as I speak with you currently, prices are still in the greens. WTI is still over 100, Brent is still over 100. And so it doesn't look as though we are getting back into the 80s to say that, well, government has done what it can. So government is taking out the intervention. So we are asking that government should explore, of course, an ingenious way to extend this for at least another 4 weeks so that we can all monitor what pertains on the international market. Because again, even for the coming window, chances are that prices could go up again. And so if we are in a hurry to go remove this, we'll simply be asking the diesel or Argo users to go back to paying 17, 18, for diesel. And I think that the government has shown a good gesture. We would advise that if it is extendable, they should do whatever they can to extend it so that the system remains calm. Don't forget that before the government intervention, we already had the GPRTU and other transport operators even looking at, increasing transport fares. But as soon as the intervention came, everybody withdrew and said that they can all operate within the numbers that we have currently. We'll be hoping that my brother John Jinapor and, of course, the finance minister, the Honorable Akufo-Addo, will do whatever they can to extend this for the Ghanaian because we don't have too many options at this point. But
Duncan, you would also agree with me that on the flip side, temporary measures often cut into OMC and BDC's margins, right? So how sustainable is it for members to operate if the extension comes without margin adjustments?
Personally, I would expect that the government will cushion the OMCs and, of course, everybody else who is affected by these margins that we have to intervene for. I would say this on the back of the fact that the crude exports that we have as a country would equally be yielding a lot more. And so anytime that we say government takes a hit, the industry takes a hit, there's also sometimes a surplus window somewhere as far as the upstream market is concerned. And so it should be a win-win situation. Government should not allow the market to absorb all the pressure, from these interventions. Whatever government can do to also make their operation sustainable, I would advise the Energy Ministry to look at it keenly. I know for a fact some of the entities or agencies also lost their margins per this intervention policy. And so extending it will mean that they will still continue to lose those margins. I would beg that whatever support the finance ministry can be able to Ghana to make them sustainable, we should explore those options and not let them bleed to death.
In a minute, granted if government extends the projection like I'm making, and versus if they don't, what's your projection for petrol and diesel prices over the next 2 months? In a minute.
As I did indicate, prices are still above 100. The CD clearly has come under some pressure, and that pressure can be explained by the fact that if your fuel prices continue to hover around 14, 15, 16, you are likely to have your currency gravitate towards those numbers because there is this unspoken rule of a liter to a dollar. And so prices could become quite high in the next couple of days or weeks, especially in view of the fact that the global buffer is already getting depleted very fast and prices are still above 100. It could only be fair that, again, the Ghanaian consumer is given the relief that the government has so far supported us with. We are very happy that the government stepped in. The next couple of weeks would also be crucial, and I think that we can only ask that the government continue to extend that intervention so that even if prices were to go up, they will not be coming from the very high numbers that we could have been if the interventions did not pertain at all.
Thank you very much, Duncan Amwa, Executive Secretary of COPEC. A while longer on this, because chartered energy economist Efan Owusu Ajiman is cautioning government against adopting blanket relief measures such as tax removals on petroleum products, warning that such interventions could worsen inflationary pressures in the economy. He spoke earlier on the marketplace with my colleague Darrell Kwao.
Government shouldn't just go ahead to bring out cushioning the people or generally everybody in the country, but it should be targeted. For instance, certain sectors of the economy can be looked at, especially with regards to the production sector, who heavily depends on diesel in terms when to do their production. Governments can look at some of these sectors and give them the cushion rather than having a cushioning on the blanket size in the economy. And so our government's Bank of Ghana, as it's currently doing, can also increase its vigilance on the monetary market to ensure that inflation rate does not increases. This, amongst other various policies and amongst various targets that the government is going to put in place, is going to help control inflation in the future.
Away from petroleum sector, fresh data from Maverick Research, which tracks over 15,000 products across 60 consumer categories nationwide, shows that Ghana's fast-moving consumer goods, known as MFCG sector, grew by 15% in value and 6% in volume in the first quarter of 2026. Details in this report.
According to the market research firm Maverick Research, this looks like a solid rebound, but in reality, it reflects a more tentative recovery. After a period of high inflation and shrinking purchasing power, Maverick Research said Ghana's consumers are re-entering the market, but not with abandon. It explained that the pattern of recovery is telling. Furthermore, it pointed out that food has emerged as the undisputed driver of growth, accounting for the bulk of both value and volume gains. Staples such as edible oil, milk, and noodles are buoyant as households prioritize the essentials of daily living. Yet, even here, something subtler is at work. Despite rising prices, the report said some discretionary food items continue to grow. Elsewhere, it said the recovery is partial, with non-alcoholic beverages showing early signs of life, particularly in volume terms. It added that growth in segments such as water suggests that consumption is normalizing slowly. However, the category remains one of the most exposed to economic pressure.
All right, so let's make sense out of this. Joining us via Zoom for more is Atu Maika. He's the Chief Executive Officer of Maverick Research. Atu, thank you very much for joining us and good to see you. And you are saying that value grew 15%, but volume only 6%. Is that supposed to mean that consumers are buying less or what?
So it means that consumers are still paying more, and buying more versus same period last year, right? So Q1 this year versus Q1 last year, consumers are buying more, they are paying more for it. And the growth of it means it's more price driven, right? So there's definitely inflationary pressure still in the system. But if you put this within the historical context, this is very, very encouraging in the fact that in previous quarters, we had much higher 20% plus growth with single digit less than 1%, 2% in some cases, in some quarters over the past 3 years, minus negative volume growth, right? So this shows we're actually selling more units, more kilograms of product, but we're also paying slightly more for it.
So to what extent did price increases versus real demand, drive this growth?
So to the extent that real demand and versus price growth, I think what is unique about what we are seeing now is that if you look across, there was a bit more of an uneven reaction to the price increases that we had across, right? So for staples, there's definitely the pricing premium that's also showing that, listen, we took up pricing and volume still grew, either close to how much the percentage increase in prices for that matter. If you look at a bit more of the discretionary side of our consumer goods sector, the reaction to price increases continues to be uneven, right? And however, it still shows some positive momentum as opposed to declines from that perspective. So overall, if you look at it in that sense, it's still primarily driven by price, but with consumers are in a position to spend a bit more and still go back to buying slightly more than they were a year ago.
And I'm curious, is this sustainable if inflation ticks up or incomes stay flat largely?
So the key thing I would want to come to is even with all this this encouraging news, affordability still remains a concern. When we've pulled shoppers and pulled consumers, even in Q1, that still remains very high. And the buying patterns also indicate that. So because you have manufacturers who've also adapted, reduced pricing, offered, as now kind of giving more product for less, or in different ways, extending some relief to consumers from that perspective. And so when we talk of sustainability and price increases, there's definitely limited appetite, if I use that word, for price increases and higher inflationary pressures, given where we are coming from. And I think the market itself, manufacturers, distributors, have also seen that and would also have to look at ways to address the question of affordability in the broader context of inflationary pressures. But the simple answer to that is that's very limited. And I think the appetite for Ghanaian consumers for increasing prices is low.
All right. Any regional differences in volume recovery?
So in terms of regional differences, not that much, right? And however, the mix of products that are bought in Accra is obviously a bit more different. I mean, more of the premiums higher in higher premium products in that mix compared to what you'd find where affordability drives it a bit from Kumasi all the way to Tamale upcountry in that context. But in terms of the regional differences, I think the coastline tends to have more of a premium mix within the basket of goods that they're going, and which is remain the same.
Atu, Micah, thank you very much for your time speaking to us here on Business Live. I'm glad. This is still Business Live. Let's take a quick breather. We'll be right back.
Hello, my name is Pamela from Customer Service. Please revalidate your account by texting your Ghana card number to 0500,000 247.
Hey, Abili, wabedim.
Madam, give me the numbers behind your ATM card. I'm calling from the head office.
An email was delivered across to our customers this morning.
Confirm if this is your bank account. 100,100,100.
Thanks for sending your bank card details.
Send the OTP now to avoid cancellation.
EcoBank will never call, email, send an SMS asking for your PIN, OTP, bank card, or Ghana card details.
Don't get played. EcoBank, the Pan-African Bank.
Hello, please, I'm calling from Customer Experience Center.
Hello again, welcome to Business Live. The Ghana Revenue Authority says it will begin enforcing the Fiscal and Electronic Devices Act this year. And this is part of efforts to automate the value-added tax collection and close the estimated 60% revenue gap in the system. Commissioner General of the GRA, Anthony Kwesi-Sapong, announced the initiative at an engagement with the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industries. More in this report. Engagement with members of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry to discuss tax compliance and digitalization measures. Commissioner General of the Ghana Revenue Authority, Anthony Kwesi-Sapong, said the goal of the Fiscal and Electronic Devices is to move VAT collection from a manual, trusted-based system to a real-time automated one.
We are going to implement the Fiscal and Electronic Devices Act. What it means is that for every retail point, by law, we have to use a device to sell, which will give GRA the opportunity to know sales that are taking place in your shops, in your business, and every corner as well. And as you know, one business's sales is one other business's cost. So in the end, at the back office, we should be able to know the overall transaction volumes, which is cost or revenue to one business and the other, and be able to accurately and completely account for VAT. So this is an area we'll be doing a pilot. We'll be selecting some businesses to pilot. And President, this one will appeal to you that from among your members, you may just select 1, 2, or 3 to be part of the pilot, because we want to ensure that we are working with businesses to know how this works before we fully roll it out.
President of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Stefan Mason Abbas, welcomed the introduction of the Fiscal and Electronic Devices and hoped the novelty will address all bottlenecks with regards to payment of taxes.
For us as GNCCI, we want our members not to be harassed. And we are not going to be harassed only when we understand. I gave an example of my personal experience as a business operator and what happened to me in relation to having a tax credit and having a tax liability. How do I understand? And like the commissioner explained, I have to apply for it. So does it apply to every private sector or business operator? So this was a good occasion for us to understand that yes, you may have the tax credit, but there are processes that has to go through for you to be able to enjoy that tax credit, even though it's for you.
Mr. Anthony Kwesi-Sapong also announced that a partnership deal has been secured with some financial institutions to help provide credit for importers who are finding it difficult to clear their goods.
One of the things we have come out as GRA is working with financial institutions, which is banks and non-bank financial institutions, and doing arrangements such that when importers bring their goods into the country, and for one reason or the other, they cannot pay their duty, it should not lead to losing the goods. The financial institution will provide a credit or a loan to the business from 3 months to 1 year. They will use that loan to pay the duty. They will immediately have access to their goods. They will sell it. And what we are asking for business is that it's a win-win for all. When you take such a facility, you are disciplined and you're focused. When you sell, you pay back the loan, so that next time when you are bringing the goods, you can access the facility.
The engagement offered GRA the opportunity to iron out all grievances and misconceptions about the tax reforms.
Financial analyst Nelson Kojo has revealed that the funds Ghana is set to receive from the International Monetary Fund following the successful review has great potential to strengthen the country's reserve position, boost investor confidence, and improve Ghana's chances of borrowing from the international capital market. Mr. Kojo made these remarks earlier on the marketplace with my colleague Darrell Kwao.
Investor confidence has already heightened. Just last week, the Ghana's economy was upgraded in terms of rating. And so investor confidence has increased since. But then don't forget that once the IMF passed the last review, they'll be giving us about $385 million. And that is a lot of money to come up and show the reserve position of the country. And so with all these two factors, we expect investor confidence to heighten. And also, in terms of government strategy to borrow, the last rating that was upgraded and the IMF review will go a long way to actually enhance our chances of borrowing from the international capital market. And of course, the interest rate that will be paying if government intends to go and borrow from the international capital markets.
The Institute of Internal Auditors Ghana says it is extending its membership coverage to tertiary institutions across Ghana. President of the association, Ebenezer Omari-Mreku, observed a gradual decline in students' interest in the field owing to fewer universities designing academic programs to attract more entries. More in this report.
Globally, May is designated as International Internal Audit Awareness Month, spearheaded by the Institute of Internal Auditors to highlight the critical role internal auditors play in enhancing organizational governance, risk management, and operational efficiency. Institute of Internal Auditors, Ghana emphasized its value in ensuring integrity, accountability, and ethical business practices. The Ashanti Regional Chapter of the Institute thronged the principal streets of Kumasi to create awareness on their mandate. President of the association, Ebenezer Omari-Mreku, bemoaned some logistical challenges impeding auditors in discharging their duties.
Internal auditors' work is very critical, and they require the support of management of every organization. They have done very well to support our work, while we think that there's a room for them to improve and give us the resources that we need. Mostly because we do travels to other work locations, we need good vehicles so that people will not suffer any threats on the way when they are going to work. Auditors work for long hours. We write reports, we extract data to do analysis. So we need IT equipment to work because most organizations has computerized their operations. So when the internal auditors don't have the relevant IT tools to do extract and do analysis, then they won't give up the best, or the reports that they will deliver may not meet stakeholder expectation.
The group observed a reclining interest in auditing disciplines in tertiary education as they announced plans to collaborate with public universities to rope in more student membership.
The global internal audit function has grown, so the Institute of Internal Auditors Global has requested that institutes who have the capability to strengthen their collaboration with universities and then develop student membership. And that is what IE Ghana we want to do for the first time. So we have started with engagement with some universities to let them understand the role that we play and the need for us to expand our talent pipeline and introduce internal auditors to students and younger talents at the time that they are in school.
Thanks so much for watching Business Live. I am Pious Kojo.
Father, you have to hear me. The Lord will be dining, thy kingdom come.